Well, thanks for joining us. As I mentioned in my sermon, we're going to talk through the application with Stephanie, my wife, and Dave Bush. And we're going to just talk through some ways that we can put into practice what we've talked about in the text. So to start off with, I want to talk a little bit about the sermon team, as you guys are familiar with. We've talked about what the sermon team is, and I want to ask both of you, what have you found helpful about being part of the sermon team? And I'll start with you, Steph.
I think I found it really helpful in sharpening, just to discuss the word with other believers. I think sometimes if I'm studying by myself, I miss things or things aren't as clear, and it helps sharpen my understanding of the text when we're all working through it together.
Yeah, great. And Dave?
And I feel very much the same, that I have a better overall understanding of the text when we're done, and I see different points of view rather than just mine. And those points of view are quite helpful and help me to develop a different way of looking at Scripture.
Sure. Yeah, and that's part of why we're doing this here, is because even as we come to the application, we understand the big picture, but each of us will apply the principles of Scripture differently. And so that's what I found helpful about this kind of discussion, is that each of us will look at this passage and say, oh, this is how it looks in my life. So as we think about that, the main idea that we just talked about in the text of Mark 10 is that Jesus came to serve, not to be served, but to serve, and he gave his life as a ransom for many. And so we should imitate him by serving others. How would you define Christ-like service? We'll start with Steph again.
I guess when I think of it, I always think of the Philippians verse that talks about considering others better than ourselves, considering others more than ourselves. When I think about serving sacrificially in a Christ-like way, that's what I think of.
Yeah, good. Dave?
Right, taking my eyes off of myself. Sometimes it's very hard for us not to look at me, but rather we want to look at other people and keep our focus there, as well as on God, of course, and ask for his leading in doing that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we look at Christ and we realize that he didn't go to the cross for his own benefit. He didn't go to the cross because it was fun. He died to himself. He considered others better than himself. In Philippians 2 says, imitate Christ, have this attitude that Christ had. And so, yeah,
Right.
It's easy to fix our eyes on ourselves. So Christ-like service is self-sacrificing, dying to ourself. What are some stumbling blocks to that, to serving like Christ in that way? I'll start with you this time, Dave.
Okay, I see stumbling blocks as being something to get in my way. So when I spend my time on the computer doing hunting and looking around for different things, or playing games or whatever, those are stumbling blocks. They get in my way. A lot of times I think of stumbling blocks as a time stealer, and that would be a big one for me.
Sure. Yeah, and stumbling blocks can be good things that take the place of better things. So there's nothing wrong with emailing people or checking Facebook and following up with family, but if that steals your time,
Right.
then what was a good thing is now a stumbling block, because it prevents you from the best thing. So
Right.
Good. Steph, how would you define a stumbling block in your life?
I think for me, I think of my own sin flesh that doesn't want me to serve others and consider others more than myself. I think when I think of stumbling blocks towards service, they almost all stem from that. So whether I'm afraid of burning out, or I don't want to say yes to another thing, or I've had something not go right, those are all pretty much self-focused reasons. So I think often my sin flesh is the biggest stumbling block.
Yeah, and that manifests itself in a variety of ways, for sure, in our own lives. Sometimes it's being frustrated when things don't go well. Sometimes it's building our own kingdom. Sometimes it's seeking after things that are enjoyable for us. But all those things can potentially cause us to stumble in our pursuit of serving people in a Christ-like way, which is self-sacrificing. So on the flip side, how have you seen others serve Christ well? Let's start with Dave again.
Okay, I have a good recent example of Shirley Crow, who is a well-known member of our body, and how she sacrificially gives of her time to make Mass for other people. she was lacking 2 masks of 200 masks that she's made, and she made those for us recently. Not all the 200, but she made about a dozen of them for us, and she also went and got some quilts, little tiny quilts for these 2 young children that my daughter has as foster children, and gave those to her. So a great example of somebody serving God in a Christ-like manner.
Right. Yeah, I love that example of Shirley, because she just she is always looking to serve others and sacrifice of herself. She's not asking how much is this going to cost me as far as time or money. She's just saying, how can I serve? How can I serve Christ? A great example of selfless sacrifice from Shirley, and there's many others in our church that do the same.
Sure.
Steph, do you have any examples of ways that you've seen people serve Christ well in the near or recent past?
Yeah, I always think of your mom, actually, because I've watched her, we've been married coming up on 17 years, and I've watched her serve over that entire time. And I see the way that she's transitioned from season to season and continued to serve the Lord. And instead of looking for ways to get out of serving or anything like that, she's always looking for ways to enter in. So if she sees a need, she's meeting that need. She serves in the smallest ways. She sacrifices in the smallest ways, in giving the best of what she has to others, and also in the big ways of serving in ministries that take time and energy. And she does it all trusting in God's provision for the energy and things to do that. So when I think of that, I just often think of her, because she's done it season after season, died to herself and chosen to serve others in her family, in the body of Christ, and in the community.
Yeah, and she's had hard things in her life that she could have used as excuses to say, well, my life's really hard right now, I can't serve. And yet she pushes in, and what a legacy for my mom and for many others in our church that we've mentioned, Shirley Crow and others. I think of Fred and Mary and others who've devoted their lives to service, where they could have said, oh, my life's too hard, I'm going to set service aside. But instead of that, they imitate Christ and they push into service, and they serve even when it's hard, like Christ did. So it's great to see those others around us serve well. It's encouraging to us when we see others serve well. What are some ways that you have served Christ in the past, or are serving him now in a Christ-like way? Start with you, Steph.
I think for me it's shifted. When my kids were little, serving looked different because I did not have the time to serve outside of my home. But again, I was super thankful to your mom, because she reminded me, well, you're serving in your home, in discipling your children and serving your husband and those kinds of things. And so for me, it looked like that. And then as the kids got older, it looked like serving in various needs within the church, bringing meals, helping with youth ministry, and foster care. We did foster care, and then just continues to transition more to hospitality, meeting needs of people who call into the church and things like that. So
yeah, I've appreciated how you've over the years have always looked for ways to serve in various seasons of life, and that's been just a beautiful picture of this Christ-likeness, that there's not one thing that is the pinnacle, and that's what I'm going for. It's how can I serve now in this season with the strengths that I have, with the opportunities that I have, and that's just a great example. Dave, how have you served Christ in the past, and how are you serving him now?
In the past, Pat and I didn't come to know Christ until we were in our late 30s, or late 20s, early 30s, and but once we did come to know him, we were blessed in that we had people discipling us along the way in a very beneficial way to us. And from that, I learned to do that with other people. And I put that into practice. We had a Bible study for 23 years, and that has just come to an end recently. And each one of those people in that Bible study I consider to be a disciple of mine, and I try to work in their lives along with that. I think that currently I am, now that I'm not having the Bible study, I have individual discipling that I'm doing on a one-to-one basis.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, Tom Hunt's an example of that.
Yes.
A man that you've taken under your wing and said, hey, I want to disciple you, and he's working toward becoming a deacon here at the church. He's aspiring to that, and I've appreciated you as an elder saying, I want to equip you for that, and that's a great example of service, and I've seen that benefit in Tom's life and in lives of others that you've poured into. So it's just a great act of service, Christ-like service, and that's what Christ did. He gathered these men around him, poured his life into them, and equipped them for the work he was calling them to do. So yeah, that's excellent. So we talk about the big picture of what we're going for. We want to serve like Christ, and we define that, and we've kind of narrowed it down to now brass tacks. How do we start serving? What does that look like tomorrow? If somebody is saying, I want to serve like Christ, not sure how do we start? Where do you start? Steph, I'll start with you.
I think for me, the best place always to start is to take my eyes off of myself. So understanding my sin flesh, understanding that I'm prone to consider myself more, is to begin just looking around to see needs around me, because they're everywhere when I'm looking. And then I think the most helpful thing for me is not to come up with a big thing like, well, I'm going to serve in this ministry and I'm going to do this thing. It's more making a habit of serving. So just even at home, choosing to serve and love my children well, choosing to serve and love my husband well, making small choices that over time just cultivate a habit of serving. Whether it's just in very small things that happen daily around the home, or if it's things that when I'm out and about at the grocery store, just the smallest things eventually lead to the bigger things being much easier to say yes to, because you've seen God's faithfulness in the small things of serving.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's as we look at this mountain of serving like Christ, we can be overwhelmed and say, well, that's huge. I mean, Christ died for us. How can I serve like that? But the old proverb, you climb a mountain with 1,000 steps. You don't take one leap, and it's just a habit of, and I've seen that in your life, which is something I really appreciate. Just making small decisions to serve in behind the scenes ways, and just every step, and it becomes a lifestyle and a habit. So great. Dave, what would you suggest for those who want to start serving like Christ, tackling this mountain? Where do you start?
I would suggest that you begin with prayer. Prayer is going to God and seeking His will for your life. Yeah. And He has a plan for each one of our lives, and He will guide us in that plan. And part of that plan is to be disciples like He wanted us to be, to go out and share His word with other people. But the big part of being able to know His will is to be in His word on a daily basis. So I would highly recommend that, and that we would continue to take our eyes off of ourselves and keep our focus on others and what can we do for them rather than what can they do for us.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, when you start with prayer, it immediately takes your eyes off of yourself. When you're praying, how can I serve? God, show me how I can serve it. You start to look at what is available, and same with the Word. The Word is a mirror, so we look at the Word and it shows us our reflection. We may say, I'm not serving well, and so those two things start to point us in the right direction. And
exactly.
Prayer changes our heart, and prayer does work spiritually as well. And so starting with prayer gets us to thinking about serving well. Yeah. And yeah, it's a great thing to really press into, though it's difficult. It's not easy. And yet we look at Christ and we realize He didn't do it because it was easy. It wasn't easy for Him either, but He did it as a beautiful example for us. And we reap the spiritual benefits. We have salvation because Christ was willing to consider us better than Himself, to take on the form of a servant, to humble Himself, to not consider equality with God something to be grasped. All those things from Philippians 2. So this is a big task, but it's one that's paramount, it's essential in the Christian faith. And so our goal is to begin, and I think as we've talked through it, really the thing that I'm hearing from you both is start, just take a step, small step, begin that process, pray, and you'll begin to see opportunities, and then take those opportunities and begin to make it a habit, to serve life like Christ, to serve sacrificially, to consider others better than yourselves, to die to yourself,
Yes.
And to be kingdom centered in all of that. And I think as we do, we'll see benefits in our own lives, and we'll see benefits in the kingdom as well. So, well, thanks for sitting in here and chatting with me. I found it beneficial, and
Yes.
I think I just enjoy this format, and hopefully those who are watching are able to reap the benefits of this as well. So thanks again, and we'll hope to talk again soon.
Okay.
Brother, sister, let me serve you. Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. We are pilgrims on a journey. We're together on this road. We are here to help each other walk the mile and bear the load. I will hold the Christ light for you in the nighttime of your fear. I will hold my hand out to you, speak the peace you long to hear. I will weep when you are weeping, when you laugh, I'll laugh with you. I will share your joy and sorrow till we've seen Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. All our hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All the glory to you, God, the light of the world, Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer,